Hey guys, here we go again to the episode number 5 of the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So before we start, I want to say thank you to my sponsor Spider Korea, and also a big thanks to Elton Silva, the guy who wrote with Eduardo Correia muito antes do MMA. It's way before MMA, the history of the Brazilian martial arts, not just Brazilian but also the mixed martial arts around the world. And soon I hope they will have an edition in English. So let's go to the part number 4. So in the previous episode, and today we're gonna talk about the first time the Jiu-Jitsu arrives in Brazil. So in the previous episode, we are talking about Count Koma, Mitsuyo Maeda, who is one of the pioneers of Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil. And before Maeda arrived with his troops of fighters, Satake, Okura, Shimitsu, all the Japanese fighters that we talked before, in Brazil, the Japanese martial art was already presented here in the country. So the first record of someone teaching Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil is from the end of 1908. It's the Japanese Sada Miyako and his assistant Ume Kakiraha. Miyako and Kakiraha were from Kodokan. They were hired by Brazilian Navy to teach the troops and brought from Japan by the military ship Benjamin Constant. And at the time, Japan had just won the Russo-Japanese War between 1904 and 1905 and was starting to stand out as a military power. Japanese Jiu-Jitsu masters were hired by several countries to teach their art to military and police forces. In addition to teaching the troops, the Japanese also present themselves at the concert hall on the busiest avenue in Rio de Janeiro. The name was Concerto Avenida. However, whoever managed to resist more than 3 minutes fighting with one of them would win a cash prize. So they pretty much were doing what Maeda would do a few years later, like challenge all the fighters to resist or to fight and try to win against them, then and offering money if somebody could do that. And of course, this attracted attention of many fighters, not just Brazilian but also foreign fighters that try to get the prize. But all of them were taken down and submitted by the small Japanese. And in the beginning of 1909, Sada Miyako, who was also called Sakuzo Miura or Saki Miura, organized a jiu-jitsu tournament for his students in the Navy. And this is possibly the first jiu-jitsu championship ever to be held in Brazil. And in the Concerto Avenida, that concert hall also is the first time that Sada Miyako he lost just one time there. He had a single defeat there. It was to a capoeira fighter called Siriaco in 1909. Sada Miyako was caught by a kick named in capoeira rabo de arraia and got knocked out. The journal and the newspaper at the time said that the capoeira fighter would use that trick. He was extending his head to greet the Japanese and at the same time throwing the kick. Miyako continued to take the challenge in the concert hall for some time, winning all fights except the one against Siriaco. And Sada Miyako, he also taught civilians and he taught in private classes and in clubs in the city of Rio de Janeiro. Among of his students there was Mario Aleixo, a capoeirista who would become the first teacher of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. And also another student of him was very famous. His name was José Floriano Peixoto Filho. And he's the son of the Marechal Floriano, the second president of Brazil. And why Mario Aleixo started to talk with Miyako? Because he went to challenge him in the Concerto Avenue and he lost in the first day, and he come back the next day, lost again, and come back for the third day, and he lost 3 times. So finally he decided to take jiu-jitsu lessons with the Japanese masters. And Miyako also formed several instructors in Rio de Janeiro Navy, who were sent to various sailors' apprentice schools spread through the country of Brazil. The goal was to modernize the troops' self-defense, in that time strongly influenced by capoeira. He also trained military personnel in the army who took for jiu-jitsu training at the institution. And years later, Mario Aleixo, one of his main students, would go to train with Conde Koma when Maeda was in Brazil. And at that time, there is a very interesting story. When Maeda saw Aleixo training, doing some capoeira with another famous capoeira guy at that time, named Zé Maria, he got really impressed, and he started to train capoeira and add to his own style. Aleixo was the first to methodify a complete fight system, mixing jiu-jitsu with capoeira savate and boxing. In 1931, at the age of 44, Aleixo would fight a young George Gracie. He ended up losing that fight, but everybody said it was a pretty tough fight. And coming back a little bit on time, in 1912, the Navy ends his contract with Sada Miyako, and like we said before, a few years after that, Count Koma, Mitsuyo Maeda, arrives in Brazil with his troupe, and he continues the tradition of accepting challenge in concert balls, circus, and the jiu-jitsu instructor in the Navy. And Satake, one of the Koma's troupe members, he settles in Manaus and starts to teach in jiu-jitsu in 1916. And in the same year, Maeda taught jiu-jitsu in Belém at the Paysandu Sport Club. So, there was these two academies, these two dreams starting in the north of Brazil in 1916. In Manaus, in the state of Amazon, Satake was teaching, and in Belém, in the state of Pará, Maeda was teaching jiu-jitsu. And Carlos Gracie said that he and his brothers, they started to train with Count Koma at that time. In addition to the Gracie brothers that started training with Maeda around 1960, the Gracie brothers that started to train was Carlos, Oswaldo, and Gaston Gracie Jr. George and Elliot, they didn't train because they were too young. So Maeda had another several outstanding students. One of them was Jacinto Ferro. In addition to being a great athlete, he was also the main teacher of Count Koma's gym. Besides Koma's, Ferro is probably one of the teachers of Carlos Gracie. And another important student would be Donato Pires dos Reis, who, together with Carlos, would open a jiu-jitsu gym in 1930 in Rio de Janeiro. And this gym, a couple years later, in 1932, would be the first Gracie Academy. So I hope you guys like the history. If you didn't watch the previous chapters, just come back on my feed or on the YouTube, wherever you guys watching, on Instagram or YouTube, and watch. We're gonna keep continuing now this history, and I hope you guys coming back and watch. Thank you.